All right.
You
So
did great.
we're recording, and thank you for joining us. Erin Burke Moran is with us. Erin Burke Moran is a guitarist in the band Caspian. Hopefully, you've all heard the music, and you looked at the website yesterday. And we're talking about what the artist does to provide. I guess we would call it providing content, basically. But how does the artist survive? What's it like? And what decisions do they have to make? And how do they navigate the path? That's about what we talked about, right, Erin?
No, for sure. And actually, I mean, it's actually kind of an interesting time to talk about this with everything that's going on, because that's kind of like our only tool at the moment. Like our tours have been kind of canceled. And,
is that right?
Well, at least our latest one. I was actually going to be on the road right now, but yes. So we're still trying to figure out when we can get back out there. But yeah, I mean, we're really turning to media and trying to find ways to stay in contact with fans and just with people in general right now. So
how
we can
far?
get into that, but
I'm curious about this for myself. But how far out did you have to cancel?
As of right now, we've canceled out until, well, we were going to be on tour through a little bit, like maybe like 3/4 of the way through this month.
Yep.
Another 2 weeks or something like that. So our next dates are booked in mid-May, and they'll go from like mid-late May to early June. And right now we're kind of like debating on that tour. We have
It gets, and I know this is something that everybody who's got any kind of an event planned is thinking about, is that, well, we're scheduled in mid-May. This lockdown is only in place till May 4th, but how do you sell tickets? Is anybody want to go?
It's like an incredibly complicated discussion. I mean, we do weekly meetings with our managers, and it's really just kind of week by week we're taking it. I mean, I honestly think at this point, like anything in the next couple months is probably going to get canceled. It just doesn't seem.
Yeah, we have something, the Hampton Beach Comedy Festival, which is a 4-day event, and it's not huge. It draws 800 to 1,000 maybe over 4 nights, and we're in July, and we're thinking we may not do it this year, and we don't know if we want to make the effort to do all the promotion, because we don't know if anybody's going to show up at the beach. So
Yeah.
it's and you guys obviously are traveling in many cases long distances. Where does Caspian fit in the music world?
Well, so I mean, we're part of this genre called post-rock, which could mean a whole bunch of things, but basically for us, it just means that we're predominantly like an instrumental band. So kind of like classical music, but we're a rock band. So we're not like mainstream or anything like that, but we've kind of fit in this. I don't even know like how to exactly describe it, but like we've played in 40 countries. We've been on over 40 countries. We've been on like 4 continents. We put out a record. We tour Europe, Asia, America consistently every time, and we've been to some other places here and there, and eventually we'll get back to those places when it's possible. But yeah, I mean, we're basically playing venues between 200 and like 800 capacity. So it's like more like the club kind of scene,
Yeah.
We just the internet really, we kind of hit it when like MySpace was kind of like still a thing, and the band's been around for maybe 14 years now, 15 years, 16 years, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, 2004?
2004, yeah. I mean, I actually joined the band about 13 years ago, so I wasn't an original member, but yeah, it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and you said 200 to 800, and so it's mostly clubs, not small theaters.
No, it's mostly clubs. I mean, we play small theaters on occasion. Just depends on. It's such a random thing the way that we get booked. I mean, we have like a booking agency, both in Europe and in the U.S. There's people that are working on these things, and it's all professionally done.
Mm-hmm.
We're filling more. I don't know. It's every tour is different. Like in every city's different. Like we do it about 1,000 people in Boston, but then there's places in the U.S. where we might play for like 150, 200 people, and our general audience is probably between like 400 or 500,
Okay.
like in major cities and A markets.
Does the band have a booking strategy? For example, some bands, they will go out, they'll play a smaller place, they'd rather fill a smaller place than make more money at a bigger place with a half-filled room.
Yeah, I mean, no, totally. That kind of just changes every tour. I mean, and usually like when we put out an album, like this was our first set of tours after we just put it out a record in January. So yeah, we were gonna, you kind of go moderate to begin with. Like hopefully you fill the clubs that you're getting in or you're at around capacity, and then we do some support tours, as things kind of progress through the album cycle, and then kind of see where it is. I think you always want to make sure that you're, at least getting enough people in the rooms to make sure that it's worthwhile for the venues. Otherwise, you're just going to start backtracking. So it's an interesting little kind of dynamic, But things have steadily been growing, and you just kind of you get into a certain size club, and you play that for a few years, and then maybe in this city or that city it steps up, and it's just really an evolving process.
Yeah. Do you have countries or areas where you're more popular than in other places?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of it's been interesting getting into some different places, especially getting into Asia. We're actually like, do very well in China. We play some of our biggest shows there. But it's also really kind of interesting because, we predominantly play Europe and US, and for a little while I feel like our shows were bigger in Europe. They've been bigger in the US lately, but it kind of depends on, it's really about where how much you played recently where, so we focused on the last record, we focused a lot on the US and did a couple support tours in the US, and that was all kind of happening more than, and we kind of like we're slacking in Europe a little bit. But I mean, it's just it really just it changes all the time. But I mean, there's also some weird, odd consistency where it's like really strange. You'll be out on a tour and you'll see like almost sometimes down to this like 10 people, like the same number in a few cities in a row, or like half a tour or something. It's really strange how.
Really?
But yeah, it all kind of grows at the same time.
Is it a different experience to play in one kind? Are audiences different, or the experience different, like it's in certain countries versus others?
No, for sure. I mean, you really get like a snapshot into what a culture is like. In Germany, for instance, it's a much more kind of reserved culture, and you can play for audiences where they'll be like, you can hear a pin drop in between songs, and people are just very respectful and quiet and calm. And then like in places in Eastern Europe, it's a lot rowdier, and people appear to be having more fun, even though it's really, it's one thing I've kind of learned is it doesn't really matter what people are doing at a show, and you can't really tell like how it's affecting them. They don't have to be like freaking out to be having a good time. So
yeah, this is a little off. Do you ever find in my business, I find sometimes there's a difference between a Friday audience and a Saturday audience?
Yeah,
Friday a little more stressed and a little more reserved. Saturday's a little looser and a little easier.
No, totally. Yeah, I think that definitely applies in general. I mean, like how much people kind of like relaxed, or how many beers they might have in them, or whatever.
Well, I think it's getting rid of the stress. I think Friday audiences are like, they're out of work and they fed the kids and they got the babysitter and now they're out and so just entertain me.
No, totally. Yeah, I mean, then you got the Monday night shows. So.
And I would think let me think. I've had like midweek shows where they're very happy to be there. It
could be so like either way, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's like Monday and it's like, everybody might as well just be.
Do you have a demographic for your audience? Like who's your audience? Are they people who?
Yeah. No, that's an interesting question, because it's really, because of our music isn't really stylized in like a specific like there's not necessarily like a certain type of person that's drawn to it. So
Yep.
I mean, we have, there'll be on the last tour I was at, there was a, mom with her 7-year-old kid up in the front row hanging out for a little while. There's like much older people, and then what we've kind of seen is like when we tour with different bands, especially like we toured with this like kind of like goth band over in Europe, I don't know, a few years ago, and you'll see like all of a sudden like a slew of like goth kind of people hanging out at the shows, and it's kind of neat because it's just really is a wide mix of people. So
Cool. Um,
I will say that they tend to be like rather respectful people though, for whatever
they tend to be
whatever
what kind
that
of?
is.
Oh,
Kind of
respectful.
respectful. Like it's usually just like a good vibe going on. We don't really have too much moshing, which there's nothing wrong with that, but there's like it's a pretty chill vibe in general.
I remember that I just watched something on Genesis, and they said that when Peter Gabriel was in the band, which is interesting because Peter Gabriel was kind of he was kind of that I don't know, sex symbol fits, but he was, yeah, I think he was kind of a sex symbol when he was with Genesis. But Genesis's audience was primarily male until Phil Collins became the lead singer, and then they started to write hit songs that got played on the radio. And then, as one of the band members said in this documentary, he said suddenly we doubled our audience because now there were women coming too.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I will say that there's like, a fair amount of like dudes that show up and, guys in bands probably. So we're definitely like a musician's band kind of band. So.
okay, and I know we talked about this, and it's a kind of the just to give people a sense of the kind of what you make. This is the money question that we were talking about.
No, totally cool. And I was thinking about this. Yeah. I mean, for a long time, probably 6 or 7 years, we went on tour and all the money was funneled right back into the band. Like, we were saving for records, for recording, for whatever. And, so we did it just because we loved it and we were trying to get somewhere. And, eventually, yeah, the band became more profitable. So, I mean, I think the easiest way for me to say it is like, now when I go off on tour, I'm usually making about as much money as I do when I'm at home. And at home, I, teach guitar. So that's, it's relatively comparable. I don't know if that kind of answers the question well enough, but I think, it's a decent day job.
Yeah. Okay. I think it answers the question.
Yeah.
And you've been on. It's funny. I thought you were on one independent label. You've been on several independent labels.
Yeah, no. So that was. I thought that was a pretty interesting question too, because I've definitely seen like very indie labels, like the earlier ones that we were on, and this independent label that we're on now is this guy out of New York. And I mean, since we teamed up with him like 3 records ago, I felt like that was the first time we were on like an actual label. I guess I kind of had this idea that if you were on an independent label before this, that maybe there wasn't anything that was like similar to like a major label. But this guy it's Triple Crown Records. He funds stuff. He takes care of our albums. We pay him back by royalties and all that kind of jazz. But I mean, the earlier labels that we worked with were really grassroots and just trying to spread the word of the band as much as possible. And this Fred's great. He's just a little bit more business, and when we need to do something, we're actually working on a documentary right now. And yeah, I mean, he funded he put in funds for the documentary, the show that we had at the Cabot a few months ago now, where that whole thing was filmed. He put up funds for that, so he really like helps us take care of, I guess, these kind of marketing things that we'd more or less be talking about in this class anyway. So that's definitely, just because you're on an independent label doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to do things or have things done. And obviously, like, the industry has really changed. Like before, when we signed our record deal, Spotify wasn't even really a thing. So we definitely feel like, Fred's getting his money back because, we have quite a few plays on Spotify. And so we definitely have a good revenue stream coming in from there.
I had somebody tell me once, probably 10 years ago, that records in the 50s were all about singles, and in the 50s and the 60s. And then in the 70s, it became about albums.
Hmm.
And she had said back then, and I don't know if that was I don't know if it was 2010 or before, but she said that it had gone back to where it was records now. People were, because they were downloading one song at a time. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's constantly like shifting, but yeah, I mean, I think more, now bands aren't even necessarily like putting out records; they're just putting out singles and just kind of going track to track. So I think the thing that's kind of weird about the situation now is you can really kind of do whatever you want. Like we still put out a full length record, and um, like that's just still our mode of operation, but you have a little bit more flexibility in how you want to approach any of those things. Like, um, I mean, people
Okay.
are still dropping singles on records, but yeah, it is weird because people definitely like might know a band, but they probably know a song, maybe not like an album. Like that's just kind of like how consumerism kind of works with it, I think. Like I definitely know a bunch of songs, and I might not even know what band it was
Yeah,
because I heard it on Spotify or glassed over it or Shazammed it or.
that makes
But
sense.
yeah,
And you've got, is it 6 albums and 4 other recordings, or does
let
that
me
sound
see. I
right?
think we just put out our fifth full length, and then
Okay.
we have like, yeah, I mean, a couple other, at least three like EPs. Um, yeah, but we're somewhere in that kind of, yeah. That's that's where the band's at discography wise.
Yeah. And I guess you've probably heard, well, I don't know, any major label, any experience with major labels, or any stories about major labels that you've heard?
No, I mean, we don't have any like no major label has come and like tried to like sweep us up or anything like that. But I mean, I know some bands that are on different labels, and I hear stories here and there. I don't know if I can necessarily think of one right now, but I mean, the tricky thing, I guess the overall thing that I've kind of heard that's tricky about that is, you get signed to one of these labels and they throw you a bunch of money right off the bat, and then you're just kind of like in debt to them in like a crazy way. So if things go well, I mean, that's great. If things don't go well, then, it's just like anything else where they're going to take care of the bands that are doing the best for them. And, you might just, so it's, I don't know. I mean, yeah, kind of, it's interesting.
I've heard this about Barnes and Nobles, is that if your book doesn't sell, I mean, the great thing about Barnes and Nobles is they're everywhere,
Hmm.
and they're going to display your book in a good spot, and that part's great. But if it doesn't sell right away, they discount it, and they discount it, and then they discount it, and then they get rid of it, and they're just kind of interested in that fast turnaround. What I've heard about kind of some of the major concert promoters is that if your tail doesn't if your tour isn't selling right away early, then you're coming down with bronchitis or something, and you got to cancel the tour.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm sure weird things can happen like that. I mean, I think another way to kind of like look at it is, I think we spent maybe $25,000, $30,000 on the last record.
Yeah,
But you might on a major label, you might get a $300,000, front, or $600,000, and then you might end up spending that much on that same record,
yeah,
and so then you're that much further in debt, and so it's kind of like a weird game. Like the more money you have, like you don't necessarily need to spend $1 million on a record to make a great record, right? But if you have $1 million, you might spend it. So it's, you know definitely something to be kind of thoughtful about, or just, I don't know, whatever that's worth.
are there any social media or other tools that are important for a band?
Yeah, sure. I mean, right now we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'd say that those are kind of the main three. Like, I'm sure every band's kind of a little bit different, but I guess we can kind of get into a little bit of what we were talking about at the beginning here, is like in this intermediate kind of time where we're not on tour and we were supposed to be on all this. Yeah, we're just trying to find ways to interact with people over the internet. So everybody's been doing like these live streams. The bands, they all get together and do a live stream show or whatever. And we all live in different places, so we can't do that. So we've actually just started teaching guitar lessons over the last couple of weeks. So we'll put up a feed on Instagram and Facebook at the same time, and that's been a cool way to just kind of, we're writing tabs and just kind of interacting with fans that way. But we have this documentary that we're just finishing up, that we're going to be releasing soon. We're going to do like a live stream of it on I believe Vimeo or something like this, and basically do like a virtual movie theater, and have people kind of come in and we'll all watch it together. And I think there's going to be like a small fee or something like that. So just trying to really be creative with still finding ways to interact, still finding ways to try to make money. We've been really pushing online sales since all this happened. We went on tour a few weeks ago and invested in a bunch of merch. Now we can't sell it, so we're just shipping it out ourselves and filling orders. There's something called, like, I can't remember the name of the website, something Cartel or something like this, which is basically just like a website where you can put up merch items and then you just create your own shipping labels and you can send it out, but it's like an intermediary. Yes, I mean, we're just trying to. And before all this happened, like, we were constant, and I think that's kind of how you really stay in touch with people as far as letting people know tours are even going to happen, and then just in between, like, because you're not always out on tour, you can't always be out on the road. So that's been like a pretty big thing when when we were talking about the Releases record with our record label. One of his big pushes was just to kind of monthly at least have something that you're putting in front of people. So with this Cabot show that we recorded, we're basically releasing like a song at a time, probably over the next year or so. I mean, we have like, I forget how many songs, we have like 16 tracks off of that. So just little bits of content here and there. We just did another good one is like Reddit, the AMAs, like Ask Me Anything. We just did one of those the other day. So and there's tons of ways that, with the internet the way it is, there's so many different ways for bands, anybody, any kind of artist to interact with people, friends, fans. So it's definitely become a huge part of our business. Because I think, and this was kind of like, maybe this is a good time to talk about this, but like our main sources of revenue as a band really come down to touring and selling merchandise. So the more that you can kind of funnel people in that direction, like that's, at least in the music industry, just kind of how it works. Like with record deals, you're really, they'll pay for you to make your album, but you're really paying them back for like a long time through your record sales for that album. So, I mean, another decent way to make money is through licensing. We're like kind of our music's kind of landscape music, kind of cinematic. So we've had some luck with getting it in different TV shows and little spots here and there. Still haven't really hit like any sort of major film, but we have friends who have, and I mean, that's obviously great when that happens. And it's the funny thing about licensing is that getting into that is almost just as much as like becoming a band. It's a whole other business, a whole other operation. So the more you kind of do it, the more it just kind of grows and spreads. And that's been a little bit of a slow burn for us, but we're still kind of hopeful for that. But so that's outside of like basically you have, when somebody buys your CD, the record label gets a certain percentage of that money, and it goes back to paying off of that, off your debts. But licensing is something that you actually split 50-50. So anytime we get a deal in from a TV show or whatever, half of it goes to us and half of it goes to our record label. So that's definitely a viable way to make money.
So if it's played on the radio, you get a royalty, and if it's played on a TV show, it's licensing?
Yeah, that's where would probably be a little bit unclear, but that sounds about right.
Okay.
Yeah. Like licensing would definitely be anything that's like, yeah, TV show. Like actually our stuff was played on the Olympics once, but there's some weird clause where like they can play something on the Olympics for free once. So we didn't make any money through that, but yeah, I mean, royalties are kind of mixed between I mean, we don't get a ton of radio play, so I don't even really know exactly how that runs. But like, you basically, whenever you play shows, they have this whole organization set up where you register the songs you played, and then somehow you're supposed to get this money kind of
Right.
leaking in from that. So there is, yeah, I get,
That's funny to me because I would think with satellite radio and all the different all the different channels they have in satellite radio that there would be
Well,
a
there's,
post rock.
yeah, no, there is. I mean, there's a radio station out in Seattle called KXP that gives us a bunch of love, and there's definitely stuff that happens. But I actually don't. I guess the reason I'm kind of fumbling is because I can't think of any actual streams of revenue that have come in as a result of that. You know
Oh,
what I mean? So, and if they have, they're just kind of laced somewhere in ASCAP, or like it's not anything that's like significant.
okay.
That I know
But
of.
I have I can't tell you the name of the comedian, but when XM and Sirius, he finally registered on the Sound Exchange to see about his online radio play or his satellite radio play,
Mhm.
and the response was, "We've been looking for you," and the first check was 6 figures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean I think that is a weird thing that I am realizing about this business, and we just got new management over the summer, so we're kind of playing catch up because we were actually kind of steering our own ship for like a year and a half. We had a different guy that was running the managing the band. So yeah, I mean, these guys are like a little bit more, or quite a bit more established as managers, and we're kind of trying to go through all these little different things and make sure that we're doing all the things we can. You know what I mean? Because there's
Yeah.
definitely money out there that you just kind of like, it's really easy to pass.
It's a I think it's an interesting business because so much of it is uncharted
Yeah.
in some ways. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity that seems to pop up, but then it's just even choosing a manager. I mean, how many people have talked afterwards? They said, "I got a manager and he was enthusiastic, but he was incompetent," or "I got a manager and he was competent, but he was dishonest." And
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, we've already been like screwed over by two of our record labels. So, I
they
mean,
sound
like, yeah,
they
it's
sound like publishers.
yeah, managers. We've had a little bit of a better run with, but yeah, the guys that we're working with now, we were, like I was saying, we were talking with our record label before this new album came out, and we sat down, we were having dinner with him, and he was like, "You guys need to get managers," and we're like, "Okay, like where?" So we just kind of interviewed a bunch of people, and these guys came in through some contacts, and it's a team of two guys, and they basically just started meeting with us weekly, not just to meet and talk. And after about a month of doing that, we had like developed some real plans to move forward, and we were just like, okay, I guess you guys are our managers. So I feel like we got lucky. I mean, there's always like, I don't know, anytime anybody's steering any kind of ship, there's things that could be done better, or there's things that happen. But I'd say that in general, they've really helped guide us through this whole process of now this latest record and just getting there. I mean, the whole thing is that you kind of hope you get someone that's actually helping you do like work, and these guys are doing a lot of work behind the scenes for us, like filling out stupid paperwork and just all kinds of things that artsy people don't really want to do. So
Right.
it's been helpful.
If you wanted to be a businessman, you would have been a drummer.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've been looking at industries from a money in, money out perspective. Is it correct that your money out would be recording expenses and touring expenses? Is that about right?
Yeah, no, I'd say that's pretty much it. I mean, the only other thing I could throw on top of that is maybe just like rehearsal expenses. But that's kind of, I guess that's for the most part, that would be it.
Where do you guys rehearse?
Well, we were rehearsing at the little music school that I work at
Okay.
in Beverly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're kind of using that as a hub for now. But we basically just get together before we do tours. But it's also kind of changed because we aren't all located in the same place anymore. So like for this last record, instead of meeting up a few times a week at the music school to practice for a few hours every like yeah, practice for a few hours, we actually just ended up getting together at a studio in Connecticut, kind of meeting there and spending like 4 or 5 days at a time just writing music, which was awesome. Kind of just felt like, wake up, have a coffee, and then go write music for 12 hours. So
Wow.
that was really great. And then we were just using the internet to, build stuff and work on things on our own when we weren't together. So, it's all kind of changing. When we just did a tour out in LA, like the West Coast. So we flew out there, we had our gear shipped out there, and then we practiced at some random practice space out there for a couple of days before the tour started. So, it's all kind of shifting.
What's the longest tour that you guys have been on, roughly?
The longest tour we did was in 2010, and it was 73 shows in 3 months.
Wow.
And we toured the United States. We drove across it 3 times, and then we flew to Europe and did a full tour of Europe, including like Greece, Turkey, like Russia, like all this crazy stuff. So that was grueling. That was like wild.
That's like 20. My math skills are awful, but that's just under 24 shows a month.
Yeah, it was like 73 shows in
3 months.
78 days or something like that.
Oh, wow.
It was nuts. It was just straight. But I mean, we don't tour like that anymore. We're getting too old now. And I just had a kid, so
Yeah.
it's like 2 to 3 week thing now, which is much more practical and makes a lot more sense. But it's tricky because instead of doing the U.S. all in one run, we're doing it in these 3. Well, we were going to do it in these 3 legs, so the West Coast, East Coast, and kind of down the center. But you're talking about expenses. We normally would have just like driven out, but since we were on the West Coast, we had to ship our gear. We had to all fly out there. We flew in our driver, merch guy from Germany. So, yeah, that adds like a lot to that, to the cost of a tour.
All right, we're going to open up the floor in a second after this question, but what's it like being on tour? Is it glamorous, or is it, well, I know it's both, but is it more glamour or more drudgery?
No, I mean, I think it's funny. Probably when it was really drudgery, it was like in the drudgery. I don't know, whatever that word is. Probably at the beginning, it was probably like the worst in terms of comfortableness. Lots of sleeping on couches and weird floors at parties and stuff. But it was also like crazy fun because we were going out for the first couple times. But like as it's all progressed, it's gotten much easier. And I mean, we're still touring in a van, so we're driving 2 to 8, 10 hours a day to get to different venues. I mean, I'm sure you know what that's all about. So, but yeah, I mean, it's awesome. We get to go places, and everywhere we go, people show up and they're pumped, and we put on a rock show, and everybody has a great time. And for an hour a day, it's real sick. I mean, that's why we all want to keep doing it. And I mean, if it wasn't fun, I don't think we would do it. So I mean, being able to fly all the way over to China, like go to all these cool cities, play like these crazy venues, meet all these wild people, eat all this cool food. That's all stuff that I wouldn't probably do if I wasn't a musician. So
that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely there's weird days too.
Yeah, well, I know that. Any concern about bed bugs?
You know what? Honestly, like we stay at like decent enough places most of the time. There's only been one time on tour, I think, where one of the guys had like woke up with bed bug bites. Somewhere in Wales. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, we like. My dad used to work for Marriott, so I get like a discount there. So we try to sleep in those as much as we can. And we just got to the point where like, we need to like sort of treat ourselves if we're gonna not treat ourselves, but we need to at least be living in a somewhat sustainable fashion. You know what I mean? When we're on tour. So
yeah.
And thankfully, like the money is, worked out well enough that most of the time we're not super uncomfortable. Probably the most uncomfortable times is just in the van.
Let me let's open up the floor. If anybody got questions for Erin? Cam?
What's your favorite place that you visited?
I'm sorry, what?
What's your favorite place that you visited?
Favorite place, man. I mean, honestly, I've always, like I've said, China. I know it's kind of like weird given like this. I love China. It's amazing. Yeah, we were just there actually in December. We were there pretty much maybe like a couple weeks before this whole thing started. I was actually in Wuhan. But yeah, I mean, there's so many cool places in Europe. Prague in the Czech Republic is just an absolutely beautiful city. I
You
mean,
were in Wuhan when?
in like it was either late November or early December. Like I don't
Good
know
timing.
how I barely got out of there like alive. I was like, we all couldn't believe it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like literally, I think like 2 or 3 weeks later they had the city on lockdown, so we got really lucky. But I mean,
Yeah. And then you were just.
it's a great, beautiful city. I mean, I've been there like 3 times. I love it there. It was wild.
Cool.
Place now.
Any other questions?
Who are some of your inspirations?
Oh, I'm sorry.
What's
Say that
that?
again?
I can go.
Oh,
Who are some of your inspirations?
who are some of my inspirations musically? Yeah, I mean, I'm a classically trained guitarist, so I feel like a lot of my real inspirations kind of come from like I love Bach and different stuff like that. But I mean, rock and roll. I was like fell in love with Radiohead in college. I really liked the band Muse before they got all like super queeny. But I mean, I actually find that my inspiration these days, since I've been lucky enough to tour with like a lot of musicians and different bands, like a lot of them are my friends from being on the road. We're just out with this band and on the West Coast called the Velveteen, and those guys should be massively popular. They're like absolutely incredible. So I mean, I get inspired being able to watch good bands every night for like a couple weeks. So.
Did you go to Berkeley?
No, actually, I stayed at Gordon College in Wenham.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think Ronnie, did you have a question?
Yeah. I was gonna ask what, like, obviously, like when you go on tour, your whole schedule is different. Like, what do you eat? Like, do you wake up and like cook, or because you don't have any place to cook?
Yeah, no, I know that's been something really interesting to like kind of figure out. We used to just eat tons of fast food, which is so gross. But I mean, now we kind of balance it. I'm actually like kind of a hiker backpacker, so after I got into that, I just like try to have like little like breakfast bars for the morning time. And a lot of times hotels have breakfast. When actually in Europe, the hospitality is amazing, so there's usually some kind of breakfast included. And then we get to the venue and they do these things called buyouts, and we do per diem. So per diem is just every day the band gives you like $10 for food or whatever, you know what I mean? And then when you get to the venue, they either provide you with a meal usually, or they give you like 15, $20 or something. So you get to, usually go out somewhere nearby and grab dinner at a restaurant, or just kind of like whatever we're feeling. But I mean, I think it's definitely been a blend between that, and I mean, we went through different phases where when we were on tour for a while, we'd like each of us would have like our own little cooler and be making sandwiches, and I don't know, different things come and go. I think the latest thing that I got into was the AeroPress, which is going to be my ticket moving forward for coffee. So
The what? I'm sorry, the what?
AeroPress,
What's that?
it's just like this. It's just a coffee press. So hold on 1 second.
Here we go.
See, I'm learning new things. Great.
Sorry, coffee nerd. So it's just this little thing here, and basically you you put some coffee in this with some water, and you just press it down, and it's like espresso.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very good.
I'll keep that in mind next time I'm out. If I'm ever out again at a retail store.
It all packs down, and it's like just this little thing, and I kind of can't believe I've lived without it for most of my life.
Any other questions?
Favorite Radiohead song or album?
Oh damn! Yeah, I mean
That's rough.
No, that's a good that's pretty easy though, because I remember, I can almost remember the time, but I was in like a sophomore in college and I heard OK Computer, and I was like, a classical guy, and I was like, man, how can like classical music kind of like be rock and roll? And just something about that record in particular just blew me away. Music for a Film, I think that's the name of the song. That's
Yeah,
like one of my favorite
Exit
tracks
Music.
ever. Yeah, Exit Music.
That's a great song.
Yeah, I love that band. That whole record, I can still just put it on and just it takes me somewhere else.
Good. Any other questions, guys? Going once. Erin, do you still do the thing you used to do with teaching the kids how to be in bands?
So I haven't done it too much lately, but I was doing it still for, yeah, I mean, I did it for maybe like 7 or 8 years, but they're still doing it at the music school. I got a little bit more busy with the band, and
Right.
I actually was kind of taking a break from teaching guitar lessons, but I'm starting to get back into that. But yeah,
And what we're talking about is at the Fabulous School of Music in Beverly, they put together they teach music, so they'll teach younger kids how to play in rock bands. And how young are the youngest kids that you've had?
oh man, I had this group of kids that were probably they worked with me for like 7 years. But when I started with them, they were like, the drummer was 8, and most of the kids were like 10 or 11. But yeah, they're awesome. I think one of my favorite memories from that whole thing was just I had this group of kids, and they were probably like 10 or 11, 12 years old, and I remember them working on Enter Sandman by Metallica. I'll never forget like the first moment when they were all playing like metal for the first time, and all these like 12-year-olds were just like, what is going on? It was pretty rad.
Cool. Erin, thanks very much. I think we're all done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, guys, yeah, good luck with everything, and stay safe, be healthy. It was really nice to meet you all.
You
Good
too.
chatting.
Thank you.
And be well.
Yeah, if you guys think of any other questions, feel free to have Dave hit me up. But take care and have a great day, guys. Okay?
Cool.
Thanks,
Good
Erin.
luck with everything.
Bye.
Thank you.
No problem.
So guys, what we'll be doing, that concludes today's class, and what we'll be doing is I'll be sending out some things on Blackboard over the next week, including I think it's 75 minutes, but it could be a little longer, documentary by CNN. It's on public health. It's on it's called One Nation Under Stress. It's on YouTube, so I'll send you the YouTube link, and I want you to watch that. That's not the only thing. I've got the I'm going to send out the PowerPoint that I had online. I'm fixing that, and I'm going to send that out. I'm also going to have a video about that I'm going to send out, and I'll probably have a quiz at toward the end of next week that I'll send out as well. So just for the next week, I just want you to pay attention to Blackboard and watch the video and just do the work, and then we'll meet here again in about basically the week after next on the Tuesday. So we good on that?
Yeah.
What
Okay.
chapter in the book are you referring to?
I'm sorry, what's that, Ada?
What chapter in the book are you referring to with the PowerPoint?
The PowerPoint is on multiple chapters. It's kind of reviewing the industries and the in and out of, how they make the money in broad terms, that revising the timeline in the book to just get rid of a few things and shorten it up a little bit. That's the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Did you say we're not meeting next week?
We're not meeting in class. We're not meeting like this in class, but it doesn't mean I don't want you to do the work. I don't want you to get what's the word when you get? I don't want you to get disconnected from me.
Okay.
But if you were coming to class, my plan would have been to show this movie over 2 classes and then discuss the movie. As you guys recall from Tuesday, we talked about documentaries. What do you put in? What do you don't put in? How is TV, if you're in a medium of TV, which doesn't necessarily do everything well, how do you convey these ideas? And how do you build your argument? And where do you go with it once you built it? So that makes sense to one and all? Hope it does.
Professor?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it should be fun. It should be fun, and it should be, I don't know how interested you'll be in the documentary. I thought it was a good documentary, but I like public health documentaries. So hopefully you'll like it. Hopefully you'll learn from it, and we'll meet back here in a week from, well, not a week, whatever it is, 14 days, 13 days, 12 days. That's all. We'll meet back 12 days. Good.
Professor?
All right. Make one thing. If anyone's struggling, just send me a text or an email. One of the things they've told us at the school is some people are having a lot of anxiety. There are people you can talk to. Granted, you'll be talking by Zoom, but there are people at the college that you can talk to. And if there's anything smaller scale, you can always reach out to me. Good? Beautiful. All right, Tom's got to go back to bed, so we got to wrap up. All right, see you guys. Have a good week.
Bye, guys. Stay safe.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.